The following podcast is brought to you by PeacemakerNetwork.com. PeacemakerNetwork.com. Audio is provided by Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com.
Well, the one person closest to Jeffrey Epstein. She tells it all. What we know now that we did not know about Jeffrey Epstein. We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. It is what some people are calling, they're calling it the fastest minutes in podcasting.
The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are solely those of the individuals participating and do not represent those of city, county, state, or federal law enforcement agencies, nor sponsors and platforms of this presentation. The Charlie Crimebuster name and all forms and abbreviations are property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. All individuals described or mentioned in the presentation should be considered innocent unless or until found guilty in a court of law. This presentation contains adult subject matter. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Charlie Crimebuster. Glad to have you on the Charlie Crime Train today. Boy, this past weekend, a blockbuster. Yes, Ghislaine Maxwell tells us about what we've all been asking about. Is there a client list? Who was blackmailed? What prominent other people played or did in this particular case? Well, she was interviewed by Justice this week and answered every single question. We're going to tell you all about that on this episode of Charlie Crimebuster. But first, welcome aboard the Charlie Crime Train. If you're a first-time listener or a seasoned listener, we always urge you to reach out with shout-out. Reach me, Charlie Crimebuster, at gmail.com. Charlie Crimebuster, gmail.com. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, PeacemakerNetwork.com. You can hear all about and read all about, I should say, all those brave men and women who rush toward danger instead of away from danger. All right, as we get going, please do us a favor. Hit that like button and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be notified whenever we drop these episodes. All right, let's get aboard the Charlie Crime Train and let's talk about it. First of all, before we talk about this blockbuster interview, there's something you may not know about Jeffrey Epstein and his case. That is that Jeffrey, was not the only one that committed suicide in connection to this case. Did you know there were actually two more people that end up killing themselves, according to reports? First of all, there is Virginia Giuffre, also known as Virginia Roberts. She was probably the most prominent victim that we know about of Jeffrey Epstein. Well, sadly, on April the 25th this year, she died of suicide, 41 years of age. American-born mother of three, well, she was found dead at her farm there in Australia. She had been living there in recent years. Now, Virginia was born in California in 1983, but as a grade schooler, unfortunately, she was sexually abused by a man her family knew. This lady certainly has had a hard time in life. She spent time as a runaway, then she was shuffled through several foster homes, lived on the streets at just 14 years of age. Then she was forced into sex trafficking by Miami sex trafficker Robert Eppinger. Well, eventually, she got free of Eppinger and then reunited with her father, Sky. When she was 16 years of age in 2000, her father, who worked as a maintenance man there at Mar-a-Lago, well, the private club owned by Trump, she then got her a job as a locker room attendant. And that's when she said she met Ghislaine Maxwell, the daughter of Robert Maxwell. Epstein and Maxwell groomed her then to serve both of them, according to her story, as well as other clients sexually. She said that in an interview and in sworn court documents. In fact, we all probably remember President Trump claimed that Epstein stole Giuffre and several other young female workers from his Mar-a-Lago spa. And he said that was the reason why he really fell out with Epstein. Now, Giuffre also claimed in 2011 that she was sex trafficked to Prince Andrew on 3 occasions by Epstein. The first time when she was 17 years of age. Now, we should say that the Duke of York, well, he has consistently denied her claims. And also, Maxwell denied it as well. Giuffre did settle her lawsuit with Prince Andrew out of court in 2023, an undisclosed amount, but everybody said it's in the millions of dollars. And by the way, he did not admit wrongdoing in the settlement, as mostly they do during these types of settlement. Afterward, she had lived, according to other people, a relatively quiet life with her husband Robert and 3 children. But then, my friend, I want you to know there was trouble. We now know, and looking at these news accounts, that right before she killed herself, she was in an accident, a car accident, she said, and that she only had 4 days to live. But now they're finding that that wasn't quite true, that she exaggerated her health situation. And she failed to realize that she had been arrested, or indicted, you might say, for violating a domestic violence order. Basically, a restraining order to keep her away from her children and her estranged husband. So it's in this background that this young lady killed herself. Then there are other people also we find that have killed themselves. There was another man who was involved in this whole situation that ended up killing himself. He was there in France, and he was arrested for his part. It was a highfalutin modeling agency type guy who was caught up in this scandal. So there was actually 3 suicides. This most prominent witness that was been used in the Jeffrey Epstein case, and one other guy who was caught up in the scandal. So this case is strange all the way around. 3 people committed suicide. That's not even counting the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell's own father, who died off of his yacht, some people have claimed that he committed suicide as well. So in this background, we now have Ghislaine Maxwell coming forward and talking to justice prosecutors from her jail cell and telling what we've all been wanting to know. And we're going to tell you all about that in a moment. First, I guess we should take just a moment, though, before we get into that, and before we get to our crazy crook story, to let you know that the Menendez brothers were in the news again. This time, they appeared before the parole board. As you all know, we've been keeping you up to date on that, and how dismayed I was that they even had an opportunity to get a crack at parole, because that wasn't the sentence that they were first set up with. It was supposed to be life without the possibility of parole. Well, the good news to me is that this parole was denied. It seems that these guys who were suddenly touted before the whole world as being the most model prisoners in the world, guess what? They were not the most modeled prisoners in the world. In fact, there were several violations, several things that they were involved in, including some very serious rule violation. In fact, one of them was questioned why they associated with a prison gang called the 2-Fivers, and how they helped them with a tax scheme back in 2013. And then there were situations where they were involved in using stolen cell phones that was snuck into the prison, and some other infractions as well. So these guys were not the model prisoners that they were all brought out to be. And because of that, their parole was denied. So I guess in California, they do get one thing right sometimes. They do when they come to parole hearings. In fact, it says it's quite difficult to get parole in the state of California. So good for California, and surprising to most of the nation, but at least, way to go, California. Let's keep those terrible, terrible, evil murderers off the streets. Do not give them an opportunity to break the laws just like they break the rules while they're in prison. Again, way to go, California. All right, we're going to share with you now our crazy crook story. Then we're going to tell you all about this interview with Ghislaine Maxwell. Now it's time for Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, as you know, in Crazy Crooks, they come in all shapes and sizes. They even do white-collar crime. And this guy went big. Went big at a Florida bank? I can't make this up. When he tried to cash a fake check. Now, if you're going to, I guess if you're going to try to pass off a fake check, you ought to go big. At least this guy thought so, this idiot. He thought he would, cash a check for $1 million. That's right, $1 million. And of course, it didn't work. This was a 38-year-old Miami man, another Florida man, identified as Mark Anthony Taylor Jr. He presented this big check written under an assumed name at a bank in Martin County here in Florida. The Martin County Sheriff's Office reported that in an August 18th news release. The check, well, it was drawn off of J.P. Morgan Chase Bank and was made payable to the Cooper Legacy Builders LLC Orlando company that Taylor had established from an LLC. His goal was to draw off the check before the bank determined it was a bad check. That's what the sheriff's office said. And thanks to an alert bank teller, surprise, 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 I believe I would even be alerted to that. What if you were a bank teller, somebody walked in with $1 million check, I think you would take a real close gander at it, don't you? Well, but thanks to this bank teller and quick responses from the road patrol deputies down there, that scheme, it was shut down before it could succeed. Taylor was arrested, charged with uttering a false instrument, possession of a fake driver's license, surprise, 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 and a possession of an altered ID card, and of course for attempting to obtain property of $50,000 or more. Way more than $50,000. In fact, just about $1 million. And another surprise, investigators say Taylor, he had a history of this kind of stuff. And it appears that he was running these type of scams all across Florida. But I guess he just went a little too big with $1 million, don't you guess? And an August 18th Sheriff's Office Facebook post what detailed the case. It's already garnered about 1,000 reactions on the first day. Many people astonished at the size of the check. Now, I would think anyone bringing $1 million check to a bank just might arouse suspicion, don't you think? So this guy who tried to cash a bad check of $1 million is indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Crazy Crook of the Week. Well, now back to our main focus. This series has been all about the theory that some people think that the government's been holding back critical information about Jeffrey Epstein by not releasing everything they have on them. And many are believing that the one person that could blow the whistle on the government holding back such information, Ghislaine Maxwell. And she would probably gladly use it and share it to use it as leverage for her own freedom. Now, we do know two things now, that this is why perhaps she was transferred from a hard prison like we had here in Florida to a more lenient one there in Texas. And that is now, I believe, because she cooperated with officials with this interview. And now those transcripts have been made public. So what did she say? Who did she implement? What about that Epstein list? Who else was in on the abuse? Who were they blackmailing? Will Ghislaine Epstein let us know all those answers to all those questions? Well, let's find out about it. Here we go. Now, Blanche was the government's attorney who went to visit her. And probably we might think that one of the reasons was maybe to ease the pressure that President Trump and the administration is getting over the Epstein files. You know, it would be inevitable that the president's name would come up in these interviews. It was raised on 4 occasions. And in this interview, Maxwell appeared to draw distance from Trump and Epstein. She described Trump and Epstein as friendly, but saying that she did not witness him engaging in any sexually inappropriate behavior. She also said that she never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any appropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. That's what she said about the times that she was with him. In fact, she called him that he was a quote-unquote gentleman in all respects. Now, Maxwell says that she may have met Trump back in 1990. Before she met Epstein. That was, of course, because Trump had been friendly with her father, that media mogul who was Robert Maxwell. Now, she also claimed that neither she nor Epstein ever really poached workers from Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate. Now, we all told you already that Virginia Guffrey said that she was actually approached there while she was working there. That was actually just down the street from Epstein's Palm Beach home. She said, "I've never recruited any of the masseuses from Mar-a-Lago." That's what Maxwell said. And that was despite the accusations of Virginia Guffrey. She said she was recruited at the age of 16 while she was working there. She also said, if you remember, she was paid to have sex with Prince Andrew. Now, Guffrey was never really named in the interview, but all of Guthrie's claims was denied. Now, she not only said that she did not see Trump involved in anything with Epstein's sexual abuse of minor children or anyone else as far as his sexual abuse. And we do know that Trump and Epstein had a falling out way before the charges against Epstein back several years ago here in Florida. But at the center of these conspiracies regarding Epstein is that reported black book of clients, which was thought to be a list of powerful people whom Epstein had allegedly trafficked these young victims. You see, many people allege that that black book had previously been published, and then it had been published one more time in February by Pam Bondi, when she said she had all these things on her desk. It was supposed to be the first phase of what many people thought was the declassified documents related to the Epstein case. Now, it was thought that that book would feature names including Trump and President Bill Clinton, who we do know have met and socialized with Epstein. But there are also people named with whom he had never met. And those listed names that we thought about in that book, that client list that he had, or maybe contacts from years ago, we call it a Rolodex. But all those contacts does not mean if their name is in those contacts that they are necessarily connected to those activities. But we thought there was a list. Now, the public also has been, asking for more evidence as to who exactly was involved in his crimes. So now many people are wondering whether there is a fully fledged Epstein client list. Well, what did Maxwell say about it? What did Ghislaine Maxwell say about it? Well, here it is. She denied it. Denied it. Repeatedly, she denied it. She said, quote, "There is no list. There is no list. There is no, and I'm not aware of any blackmail. I've never heard that. I never saw it. I never imagined it." Now, she was also pressed on her knowledge of Epstein's relationship with Clinton, and also with the current Health and Human Services Director, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and she was pressed about Prince Andrew, of course, and Elon Musk as well. Maxwell did not. She did not share any incriminating evidence of any of the high-profile individuals. And she seemed to criticize the media attention. Now, folks, don't shoot the messenger here. I'm just telling you what she said during this interview. She went on to say, "I never saw any man doing anything inappropriate with a woman of any age. I never saw any inappropriate habits." Maxwell said that it may have happened without her presence. "I'm not saying that Mr. Epstein did not do those things, but what I can say is I did not participate in that activity." Now, she also did confirm that, of course, Kennedy, our new Kennedy on the scene today, that his relationship was as a friend of Epstein, saying that they had accomplished, they had actually, I think they went on 2 dinosaur bone hunting trips. That's what it was. Went on 2 dinosaur bone hunting trips together. Now, beyond all that, here's something else that she says. She says she does not believe that Epstein committed suicide. She says that she did not believe that it happened that way, but rather that someone else had killed him. when the prosecutors asked her, did she have any knowledge or ideas who killed him, she said she did not know. She said she did believe that it was someone inside the prison rather than a hit on Epstein. In prison where I am, she said, they will kill you, or they will pay. Somebody can pay a prisoner to kill you for $25 worth of commissary. That's what she told prosecutors. She said, if it was indeed a murder, I believe it was an internal situation. And there was something else she said that we've been talking about on the program, and that's the ties of Epstein maybe to some spy agency, particularly Mossad. She denies that there was a connection between Epstein and the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad. When asked by Blanche if she had ever had any contact with an individual from Mossad, she said not deliberately. And then she said she did not know or wouldn't know. So there you have it, my friend. I have all these questions that we've been asking about the so-called quote-unquote black book or list, about any blackmail at all taking place, about any other people involved in this terrible, terrible sex scheme that Epstein and Maxwell was a part of, and about any ties to Mossad or any other intelligence agency. So this is what she said. She denied it. But the question is it reliable? Now, it is very easy to sit back and say, well, she's just posturing. She's posturing because she wants the possibility of a pardon from Trump. So she's going to say nice things about Trump. But remember, she also said nice things about Bill Clinton. And the question I am asking you and asking myself, if you're going to posture yourself to get a pardon, she could have just done the opposite. If there was real information, she could have done the opposite when Trump was not in office. If she had any kind of information about Trump, why did she not use it while Trump was not in office? Why did she not use it back during the trial, back during the time that she went to prison? Why did she not use that information as leverage there? And the question or the answer could be that that information is simply not there. And again, now, when it comes to President Trump, we know that his affiliation with Epstein was not during the time that we know that these things were taking place in Palm Beach, Florida. They had already parted ways. He had already banned him from his club during that time. And we do know that there's no proof whatsoever that Bill Clinton was involved in anything nefarious. None at all. There's no evidence there. There's nothing there. As much as people on both sides of the political spectrum would like to see, their opposite person, opposite party involved in the scandal, there's just no evidence that either side, when it comes to the presidents of Trump and Clinton, that had happened at all. So I'm not surprised at all that she said that, and I believe she's telling the truth about both Trump and about Bill Clinton as far as their involvement with the Epsteins. The real, I think, kicker in this whole interview is her denial of a black book, her denial of a list, also her denial that Epstein was involved in any of these activities that had to do with the government. But the question is, would she even know if he was involved in any of those activities with foreign governments? This is a hush-hush type of thing. Now, she did work very closely with him. She was at one time his girlfriend, and then she became involved in his businesses, and she helped him with his businesses. She received a over $200,000 salary even up until the time that he was jailed, even though they had parted ways for several years. From then, she was still receiving money from him for some reason or the other. And we do know that she was included in that earlier agreement back in Florida of non-prosecution of any of his associates. That's on appeal right now and will probably go before the Supreme Court to see if that agreement not to prosecute any of his associates would really hold up under scrutiny now that she has been prosecuted and she is in jail. So, folks, I'm afraid that all of those of us who were wanting to hear information about that list, wanting to hear information about his ties with foreign government, wanting to hear information about other people involved. Well, we just didn't hear it in this particular interview. And so that brings us back to the position. Did any of that really happen? Is there a list? Was there blackmail? Were other people involved? Was he affiliated with a foreign government? We know that he received his burial there in Israel. We know he was a friend of Israel. We know that he was honored in Israel as far as Maxwell's father was concerned. And then we know that Jeffrey Epstein had ties to Israel, maybe not through her father, but maybe through helping move some money from one place to the other, especially back during the Iran-Contra scandal. We believe that Epstein was involved in that, but there's nothing really anywhere that we know of any of the material that they've gone through or in this interview with Maxwell, with Ghislaine Maxwell. There's nothing here to say that proves any of that to be so. So the question comes to the very end, and we have to say, is there a conspiracy here or not? And I can tell you that without a shadow of a doubt, there is no evidence of those conspiracies. So, I know it is quite popular for people on podcasts to try to invent, conspiracies that may not exist. You're not going to see me do that here on this program. I think that the evidence that we know right now that's available to us, it simply states that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in illegal activity. I believe that also Ghislaine Maxwell was involved in that illegal activity. Regardless of what she says, I know that she was involved. We all know that from a multitude of other witnesses. I do believe that that is a part of this entire case, that Maxwell went to jail because of what she did in procuring these ladies to come. Some of them as young, and we know now, as 14 years of age. I believe she was a part of that, and I believe that justice has prevailed in that area. But as far as the list, as far as blackmail, as far as any of these other people being involved, as far as President Trump, President Clinton, I just don't believe it's there. I don't believe there's anything there to indicate that that's a part of it. I don't believe that we have any evidence that he was a spy. There are certainly some speculation of it, but I just don't believe it's there. So what do you think about it? That's what I'd like to hear. Reach out with a shout out. Reach me, Charlie Crimebuster at gmail.com, charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Well, we've had now the blockbuster that Ghislaine Maxwell has spoken, but she did not say what many people wanted to hear her say. So this time next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster reminding you, be safe, be alert. For the life you save, it may be your very own.
You have been listening to Charlie Crimebuster. You can find additional information and podcasts at charliecrimebuster.com. We would like to thank our sponsor, the Peacemaker Network, and also encourage you to support the first responders, military, and law enforcement personnel by contributing to the Peacemaker Network. That's peacemakernetwork.com. All music and sound effects are courtesy of Pixabay.com. That's Pixabay.com. You can also support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, tag @CharlieCrimebuster, and then click the subscribe button. By doing so, you'll be notified each time we drop one of our shows. Another more convenient way for you to listen to our podcasts, or for you to say to your smart speaker, play Charlie Crimebuster. If you have comments or suggestions, we would love to hear from you, so please send them to charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com, or you can call or text us at 407-917-2211. That's 407-917-2211. Thank you for listening, and we hope that you will join us again for another exciting crime episode with Charlie Crimebuster.